regardless of what anybody tells me, I have to try.
You got to try.
And I have to optimize the environment for trying.
Yeah.
And it's only until then.
Lil, that's gold, right? So it's like, it's not just blindly just trying. It's like you have to optimize the environment for trying.
Yes.
That means staying in a good space, eating the right things, being optimistic, all those things, right?
All those things.
Because if you're going to try, you might as well try with all your efforts, including where your energy is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you decide.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people who are supportive and talking about it. People don't talk about this. I think a lot more women actually deal with this than they let on.
Thanks for locking in. Today's guest on the Gym Life podcast is a longtime client and friend of mine, Lily Chen. Today, Lily is going to talk about her experience with IVF. Lily also works in IT, and if there's anything I know about Lily, when she's dealing with something, she's going to do her research to the 10th power. So she's a really cool person to learn from. Let's vibe out.
Hi, Jyima.
Lily,
I'm here.
You made it.
I did.
For another one of our workout routines.
Excited, yes.
Getting it in. It's crazy because we've been having to like kind of adjust our regular routine because you've been in for a minute and gone for a minute.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, what's been going on in terms of
in terms of why I've had to like leave for 2 weeks and then jump back in and then leave for another 2 weeks. So I never thought that I would have to deal with this before in my life. But we are currently about to head into cycle number 5 of IVF.
IVF cycle number 5.
So
okay.
IVF is like in vitro fertilization, right?
Okay.
Where, for a number of reasons, it could be like the woman has issues or whatever, or like the man has issues or your partner, whatever. But you want to have a baby and you can't do it through the natural. Hanky-panky way.
Natural hanky-panky.
You need some help.
A little bit of help. So did you guys try the natural way at first, you and your partner, the natural?
For most people, they would tell you would go in, you'd see like, hey, I've been trying to have a baby for a while, like 6 months to a year is usually when you would go, and if you're not successful, and they're like, oh, let me do some tests to see like why this is so. They usually tell you to try for 6 months to a year.
Okay.
But with me, we already knew that I had very bad endometriosis.
Okay.
So it's like stage 4 endometriosis.
Say that for me one more time.
Endometriosis.
Endometriosis.
So it's actually a lot more common than people think. And I wish I had known this when I was younger, because there are definitely things like diet-wise, exercise-wise, food-wise, that may have helped the situation. In addition to like just knowing and like getting tested for it and like doing all the fertility stuff like 10 years ago maybe, right? But basically 3 years ago when I went in to freeze my eggs, so this is before Bryant came in the picture.
Okay.
The doctor was like, hey, you have like cysts on both of your ovaries, and they're like the size of a softball.
Oh wow.
On each side. And I was like, huh? Like,
no, like you didn't. But prior to that, you didn't feel anything. Like, so you had no indication whatsoever.
I didn't. So like every few months, I would have like a really bad period. But I thought that was normal because they always tell you that's normal.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, it's not normal. And I saw a bunch of doctors, and again, like the diet and exercise and nutrition played into it, right? Like they were like, it would probably be a lot worse for you if you weren't on top of this stuff already with like exercise.
So because you've always, as long as I've known you, and from what Em tells me, like you've always worked out, kept.
Yeah, that was like a
lifestyle.
thing, a lifestyle choice that I had made, right?
So they said because of that, it was beneficial in terms of it could have been worse.
It could have been worse.
Okay.
A lot of the nutrition and lifestyle guides that you'll read and find around like endometriosis or just like anything women's health related is like super closely aligned to like just eating like a clean, non-processed whole foods, like anti-inflammatory, whatever like is trigger for you. So for me, it's like like all of that, right? Like gluten, whatever. And I was doing that already. So it made the transition a bit easier. But anyway, so because of that, we knew that like getting pregnant naturally was like probably not going to happen,
right? So they knew just to skip right to IVF.
Yeah. Also with age, there's like they're like, okay, like the older you get, it's like, you know, you have a set number of eggs inside you from when you're born as a biological female. And then as you get older, it's like the longer the eggs are in you, the number of healthy eggs decreases.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 34, 35 at the time. And I just turned 37.
Okay.
So, and it's interesting because when you go to a fertility doctor, when they ask how old you are, they ask for your birthday and they're like, oh, you're 36 and 36.25. Or you're 36.
Oh, so they'll go very precise as to where, okay.
Precise to the point where like every month makes a difference to them.
That's super interesting.
So it's super interesting, right? You know, but they kept on telling me, another thing I kept hearing as I went to these different fertility doctors was like, hey, but you're really healthy. You're eating right, you exercise. So that means it's like, you know, maybe you're 36 now, but like it's going to lop off a few years off of like what you normally would be at this age. You can think about it like that, which is super encouraging, especially because you're already in such a tough circumstance of like, you know, most everybody was saying like, it is impossible for you to even do IVF.
So once you found out about endometriosis, they were like, listen, this is probably like 10%. They give you a percentage chance, like it's a very low percentage.
I had to have surgery to have the cysts removed because they were so big.
Before you could even start?
Before I could even start.
Okay, I'm going to pause you right there.
Okay.
Do not forget, okay? So, right, sis, I'm going to explain the workout to you.
Okay.
Grab the weights, and we're going to pick up right at that part, okay? Because we're sitting here talking about exercise and movement, right?
Okay.
So this is super fun. So I'm going to break down the workout for you first, and then you can pick which weights you want. So I'm starting with the 20s, okay?
Okay.
And the first exercise we're going to have is one-arm deadlifts. We're going to do 10 on each side.
All right, I'm going to do 15s.
15s?
I think.
Okay.
Or whatever these. Yep, these are 15s.
Yeah. And then after the one-arm deadlifts, we're going to have dumbbell squats. We'll be 10 of those.
Okay.
We'll sit down. After those, we'll have curls, 10. Then after that, we'll have alternating lunges. Okay?
Okay.
All right, 10 and 10. So I'm going to start the clock, and then we'll go through a warm-up first. So you can put those down. We'll go through a warm-up, and then we'll get to the circuit. Okay? All right.
Starting your top of that workout. Get ready.
Okay, so first thing for the warm-up, we're going to be doing deadlift stretch where we're just, you can put those to the side. Put those to the side, too. So for the deadlift stretch, we're going to reach down and then just reach up.
Okay.
Okay, so where you left off.
Where I left off,
So
surgery.
they told you had to have cysts removed before you could even start IVF.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you had normal endometriosis, they would have to scrape all the endometriosis out at some point. But because mine were cysts on my ovaries, they couldn't get to my follicles, which are these like little, you could think of them as like egg sacs inside your ovaries, without removing the cysts first. And everything, Jyima, everything goes back to lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
The surgery was like, you know, I guess relative to all surgeries, like pretty non-invasive. You were like
a day procedure?
It was a day procedure,
Okay.
but you still went under. They put like 5 holes in my stomach, and then dragged everything out. But you know, it was still one of the hardest things for me to like recover from, for some reason. And if you go online, I went to a bunch of forums, everything, and I was like, wow, it's not just me. It's like, this is like, everyone who has this has gone through this. It's not an easy thing to to deal with. But for me, what really helped me again was like getting back to my routine. Just like.
And then, so after you went in for the day procedure, how long did it take before you were like moving around and exercising and feeling like yourself?
I know you remember this because I was like, I can't wait to get back here.
Yeah, I get the text messages.
They had recommended like at least 2 to 3 weeks of like of just like making sure that you're resting.
Okay, 2 to 3 weeks of resting after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, I hate that because it's I feel like and I understand why, but when doctors say things like that, it's for the general population. They're not saying like, oh, you know, you were super active before this happened. So
you should be okay.
So you should be okay.
They don't take that into consideration.
No. It's just a general like average guideline. And for the average American, they're probably not moving around.
Right. So then that would be a shock to the body in any circumstance.
Correct.
Whereas like if you weren't working out, then it do. But someone like you who was super active before, and then something like that happens, just going back to what your norm was.
Yeah, so you should probably listen to, I like waited for my scars to heal, and then I came in here and was like, hey, Jyima, I just need like a low impact, like, I just need to move.
Yeah, and you did okay, like you did a lot better than we thought. Right?
Yeah, like I was taking walks with my dog.
Squat, and then pivot.
Probably 2 days afterwards.
Oh yeah?
Or the night I came back, I walked around. I remember I just like walked around my apartment.
I need to move.
Well, because you're so bloated too. And for me, all of the movement actually made me feel better mentally. Yeah. And that's like a huge thing people also don't talk about.
That's really big, just because we never take into consideration the set of like physiological responses that happen once we move, like with blood flow and then just mood and everything.
Yeah, it's a feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I was talking to my therapist, a lot of your mental things manifest in physiological ways.
Yes.
And then, you know, you just don't recognize it.
Yeah.
Like stress triggers people's eczema, or like you have headaches, or hormonal shifts and you can't sleep at night, right? Those are all triggered by like mental things.
Right.
But at the same time, physiological things like working out releases like dopamine and like other things that then help you feel well mentally. So
right, and improve your sleep so that you wake up, you have energy. Exactly.
And back to all of like how this is all related to like women's health and fertility, I don't think that people talk about that enough, especially in today's world. In this generation of women where we're taught to just go, people in general, you're like, let me just do all the things that I can do without taking a breath to think about.
Or it's like, it also overemphasizing rest, right? Like, you should have something to rest from. Right?
Yes.
Like, it's like move and then have a reason to rest. Okay, so we'll start with the one-arm deadlifts. And we'll go 10 of each. We'll go one round and then we have a break. So, okay, so you come back, you exercise.
I'm exercising.
Day procedure done.
Day procedure
and then now
done.
it's time to schedule the actual IVF.
Now I'm like, okay, I want to go and check how bad things are.
I got you. There you go. Okay.
I want to check how bad things are in terms of like how my ovaries, since the cysts were on my ovaries, like how it's impacted my fertility. And so I went to a reproductive endocrinologist, which is like a fertility doctor. And they run a series of tests. It's really, really hard to exactly, tell, but there are certain markers. So they do usually an ultrasound where they look inside and try and physically see how many follicles you have on each ovary. So for, someone who is probably in their early 30s and healthy, probably should have like 15 at least on
15 follicles?
Yes, on each ovary.
On each ovary. That's like a healthy number.
Yeah, for that age. And you
Okay.
can go online, there's like a sliding scale of like, how many. And another indicator is like they do a blood test. And they look at certain, markers or hormones, things in your blood. One of them is called the AMH, and then an FSH.
Okay.
I don't remember what the numbers for FSH are supposed to be.
Curls.
But for AMH,
So
Again.
wait, sorry. So 15 is, and how many did you have?
after my I had my surgery in October of 2020. In April of 2021. In July of 2021, when I went to the fertility doctor, I had one.
You laugh, right? You're like, shit, like one, right?
I had one across both ovaries.
Across both, so it wasn't like one on each ovary.
No.
It was just.
It was just one.
Wow. Okay.
Before my surgery, with my cysts,
No lunges.
I had not a great number, but it was 10 across both. So it was not nothing. That was like very workable for IVF.
Okay.
And the thing about IVF is the doctor tries to give you or gives you a series of stimulating drugs. They're usually injections and then combination of injections like drugs that you take by mouth to make
Good.
more ovaries pop up.
Okay.
And grow, or to usually
Need more follicles?
more follicles.
More
sorry,
follicles,
yeah.
right.
Usually every month, only one follicle grows.
Okay.
What they're trying to do is make however many follicles you have, grow an egg.
Okay.
So that they can
What's
take all
what's
of it out.
your mood like during this whole process? Are you upset? Are you depressed? Are you just hopeful? Because from what I know from you, you're pretty even keel. You're like, let's just figure out, let's do what we need to get done.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm usually very even killed. I hate crying in public.
Right.
I like to process things myself first before I talk about it. But I remember it was in the fertility doctor was a woman in this case, and she told me, she's like, one, and then she immediately was like, you probably should think about finding an egg donor. Because
Okay.
it's never it's very rare that I see people go from be successful in IVF with one follicle.
So she was very hopeful.
She was not hopeful.
Right.
No.
Right.
And I just I don't know what it was. It was I couldn't stop crying. I just burst out crying in her office.
Right. So I mean, that's tough news to hear. So it's as soon as you heard it, now it's you burst out crying. And then what made you decide I still think I can do this?
That's just always been my attitude.
Yeah.
Is okay, regardless of what anybody tells me, I have to try.
You got to try.
And I have to optimize the environment for trying.
Yeah.
And it's only until then.
Lil, that's that's gold, right? So it's not just blindly just trying. It's you have to optimize the environment for trying.
Yes.
That means staying in a good space, eating the right things, being optimistic, all those things,
All
right?
those things.
Because if you're gonna try, you might as well try with all your efforts,
Yes.
including where your energy is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you decide.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people who are supportive and talking about it. People don't talk about this. I think a lot more women actually deal with this than they let on.
I've had quite a few clients
Yeah.
that I'm sure if I wasn't their trainer, it wouldn't be something they talk, but they have to tell me because they have to take the time off.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's rough. And I was okay. And I moped about it for a little. I mean, it's not a linear thing, right? There are still days in this process where in the middle of the night I'll wake up. And thank goodness for Bryant, my partner.
Yeah.
And I will be like, I don't know if I can do this. This is terrible.
Yeah.
And again, I'll just cry.
Yeah.
And then when I'm done, I'm done.
Right. And you allow yourself room for
I
that.
allow myself room for that.
Yeah.
And it's, again, super important that he allows me room for that
Yeah.
as well.
Which I love because I think so many people get it confused. They think being tough or being even keel or just being optimistic means you're that every single day, every minute. No. It means that you allow room for those moments where you want to let it out. But as soon as that's done, then you're right back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also shame around it too. And I think
Shame.
people don't they think that, but they don't
Let me
talk
double
about
check
it.
it. Yeah. Don't worry, I was.
Exercise.
There you go.
Like,
Good.
hey, this is something, and I remember one time I was like, wow, this is going to cost us like a lot of money to go through, especially this many rounds.
So that's where you feel bad.
And I felt bad. I was like, this is something that my body should be able to do free. Naturally,
Like, body,
right?
you are costing me so much right now. Right? Yeah.
And I don't know why. It just like it's a very like like even if you don't want kids, right? Like, and I've always wanted kids, but if you don't, there's like this inert like, okay, this is my body, like my female body should be able to do this.
Yeah.
But it can't.
Yeah. And that's
And
tough.
so that was really tough. It was also tough on our relationship, at least from my perspective. I don't know what Bryant will say, but
Maybe
like,
we'll get him on here after.
because in my mind, again, I was like, wow, I'm like dragging you into this.
Yeah.
Right?
But he never looked at it that way.
He never looked at it that way.
Which
and I'm
helps.
so thankful for that. It's super helpful.
Yeah.
But it still didn't stop me from like
Going through.
the thinking process of that. Like, okay, he wants kids.
Yeah.
Or I think he wants kids, and I cannot give him that.
Yeah.
And that's
Which
another.
goes back to optimizing the environment, right? And I'm sure he's aware of it too, even though maybe he's had his moments. It's like that's not going to help.
That's not
right?
going to help. And then
it's like this: we're a team. We're in
yeah,
this. Let's
exactly.
just keep the
like if it
energy
doesn't happen
positive.
for us, it doesn't happen for us. But
Yeah.
I'm in it for you. And I think that if I were with someone now that I think about it,
Deadlifts.
like if I were with someone who wasn't supportive of that, then
we do one arm.
they would not be the right person for my situation.
Of course.
Or
of
for me,
course. I mean,
yeah.
that's a huge tell. Because, and I mean, we know this as far as like our crew of people here at the gym, that we
Yeah.
always try to stay positive about everything, have a good outlook. No matter what any one of us is dealing with, we're all just going to be supportive because we know that anything that's counter to that is not going to help.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think just like never giving up. And I want to go back to the optimization.
And switch,
Because
yeah.
a lot of being here, it's not just working out. It's this community here, right?
Yeah.
If I'm having a bad day, I work from home too. So it's not like I don't get the social, this is my social interaction
right.
some weeks.
Oh, squats next.
But
Right, the social interaction, being around people, and then having, good conversation, positive energy, that also is something that you look forward to.
yeah, all of that. So on top of the, working out together, staying on top of being accountable for nutrition, all of that. And again, it's not from a restrictive perspective, just from like are you eating well?
Yeah.
Are you doing the best you can for yourself?
And then curls.
And we also never gave up just like talking to different fertility doctors. And, last year, we found a fertility doctor and he did a scan. And I had like
Lunges.
3 to 4 more follicles.
Wow.
And I just needed to give my body time.
Wow.
And my mind.
I'm sure that was good news.
And it
when
was
you heard
great
it.
news.
Yeah.
And I think, it's still a big challenge, still tough, but I don't think that I'm the only one that this like quote unquote optimization has like helped.
Right. As far as like maintaining that space. So now you get up to, before your first IVF, was it round or what do they call it?
They call it cycles.
Cycles.
Yeah.
So before your first cycle, you hit up to how many follicles?
I had 4 to 5.
4 to 5 follicles.
4 to 5. My AMH, which is like a number they look at, was a 0.7.
Okay.
That's really bad. anything below like a 1.5, I remember, is like you're like most doctors are gonna be like, oh.
Try something else, right?
Yeah, maybe you should think of a backup plan. Again, the team matters, right? This doctor was like, hey, you haven't tried yet. So finding a doctor that is of the same mindset and willing to work with you.
Yes. You know what's so funny? People don't talk about that, right? Like, so in addition to you have your friends, family, partner, of course, who are optimizing your environment, the doctor better be optimizing the environment as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you don't realize with this is a lot of doctors, their success rates are published. So if you're in the middle of IVF or thinking about doing this, you can literally go to a government website and look up a clinic's success rates.
Right.
And with me, look, like we're on cycle number 5. We still don't know if we're going to get a live birth.
But through cycle number 5, you've gotten...
We have 3, they're called euploid embryos.
Euploid.
So we did genetically, so far as we can tell, normal, healthy embryos that are ready to go back inside my body at some point.
3.
Of time. 3. Which
3
is
normal, healthy embryos.
A huge miracle. Like,
so that's a huge
grateful.
miracle, a big success.
Yes.
Okay. So you're on cycle number 5 because you just want to make sure.
I have to get another surgery before I can even implant. So back to optimization. I don't think my body would be able to do this if I had not been taking care of my health, both physically and mentally, for as long as I did before any of this happened.
And continue.
And continuing to do this, right? Like, it would just be impossible.
Yeah.
For most people, if you've made it through one cycle, I'm already like, congratulations.
Right. It's difficult
deal.
because what I do know with my clients who have done it is just the difference between when they leave to go get it, because you take about 2 weeks off. They go do that for 2 weeks, a cycle. But when they come back, it's just like energy's down. Usually they put on weight because they haven't been able to move.
The drugs make you bloated. You're holding water. You don't feel like yourself emotionally.
Right.
I felt okay my first 2 or 3 cycles.
Okay.
My last cycle was really tough.
It was tough.
Yeah. My body is not mine. I don't feel like myself.
Yeah.
I can't do what I want.
Yeah.
But then I don't know, just being consistent helped me rebound quicker.
Yeah.
Or get out of that faster.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And you've been, what I'll say back to the deadlifts, what you found almost is like your, is kind of like your new normal through this, right? Where it's like, okay, during this time, I know I'm not going to go to the gym for this time, but then I know I'm going to, eat these particular foods. You know what's funny? We have to touch back on that as far as the anti-inflammatory and things like that. 'Cause I remember you telling me about a friend that you said was going through it prior, before you even knew that you had to.
Like maybe 5 or 6 years before I
5 or 6 years before you even knew that you had to do that.
And at that time, I was living in San Francisco. A really good girlfriend of mine. I had just started working out consistently for it's 6 months into my journey. Changed the way that I was eating completely and working out. And I felt like a different person. And when she was like, hey,
and squats.
I'm going through this, it's really rough. She also had 1 to 2 follicles.
She had 1 to 2 follicles.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was just trying all of this stuff, right? Like acupuncture, Chinese medicine, taking drugs, all of that. And I was like, why don't you try just coming to work out with my trainer and working on nutrition. Let's do it for 6 months.
Curls.
We'll do it together.
Okay. So this was, we got curls next. So you told her to come work out with you. This is when you were in San Francisco. San Francisco, okay.
And so we did. She did. And 6 months later, she had 2 other follicles pop up.
So she had 1 to 2 follicles. You talked to her about optimizing her environment.
Yes.
Also watching what she eats.
Mindset,
and then it's
all of that.
And start working out. And she went from 1 to 2 follicles up to now 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe it's not, you don't have to do the hardcore weightlifting or HIIT workouts. But for someone who is I'm not moving at all, go walking every day outside.
Right.
And making time, maybe it's more so like just making time for yourself. Like, hey, this is my time.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things, and you do a very, very good job of this, is understanding that getting into routine doesn't mean going bananas.
No.
It doesn't mean you're over here and you're going through a HIIT workout, lifting heavy, all those. No, it's just doing some sort of movement that you feel comfortable with consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually is something that I struggle with. Where it's taking me time to get here.
There you go.
It's taking me a lot of time to get here.
To get there, right.
Where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to my body. I don't need to, do an hour lifting and go for a 2-hour bike ride in the same day, 4 days out of the week, and then do my normal workout. Like I was working out like 5 or 6 days per week.
That's
sometimes twice a day.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like mental.
And then, of course, managing that now. And I remember even when you came back the first time, it was like, okay, we're just gonna do this. I'm looking at you like, I can do more. Like, right, So it's like that constant battle of going to that push.
It's an internal push-pull inside me for sure. But then I have to ask myself, like, okay, you really want to go for like a run today, but you can't because your ovary is the size of a football right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what can you do? I can take Gopher for a 3-mile walk instead.
Right.
And that satisfies my like movement need.
So what I would say is there's certain people who have to do IVF who don't have endometriosis.
Yeah.
Right? So you had like almost 2 battles that you had to deal with, right? It's like having to do IVF, dealing with endometriosis. What's one thing that you say, other than optimizing your environment, that has helped you in terms of just like gathering information? Because if there's one thing I know about you, if you're gonna figure something out, you're gonna look it up, you're gonna do your research 10 times over. Like, what's I'll say even a couple things that maybe you found out in the process that you're like, oh, this was a lifesaver?
Yeah. It's actually something my sister says to me that I think about all the time. I guess it's related to optimization, but she always says to me whenever I'm about to start a cycle, she's like, Lily, think happy eggs. And it sounds
I'm not because of course we know Emily lives in a space that's just like joy, right?
Yeah.
So she goes, think
because
happy
I'm over
eggs.
here and
Okay.
I'm doing that, like researching a million things every cycle. Every appointment that you go to, something changes, right? And I'm like, oh, what does it mean if my follicles are doing this? And I'm like researching on Reddit and like all the research papers, and Brian is doing the same thing. And
So you
I get
researching,
super in
out.
that space, and then I'll think like, oh, does this make me happy? Like, like, okay, I need happy eggs. So what makes me happy?
We got to give M credit for this.
Yeah.
Out of all the research, think happy eggs.
Yeah,
right?
so I'm gonna go read a book, or like I'm gonna go make dinner because I really love to cook, or I'm gonna go hang out and call my best friend because that is happy eggs. Or I'm gonna watch a movie with Brian at home,
Right.
Or just go see Jyima.
Yeah.
But that's I think the most important thing. Like what brings you joy? Because
What brings you
it's
joy?
a really tough process.
Yeah. What I love about that is like one of the byproducts of stress is inflammation.
Yes.
Which is, so it's like not only are you thinking happy thoughts and make yourself feel good and having those physiological benefits, you're also making sure you don't go the other way, right?
Yeah.
And then have like the things that can happen if you're stressing out.
The same things that like make me push myself and motivate me so much are sometimes drawbacks, and I realize that, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm so intense and like so focused on something, I don't see anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know how you get when you get there. Go back to the one-arm deadlifts. Yeah. And it's cool because I think, and we talk about this all the time though, is the importance of your environment in your community, because there's certain times when your mentality is needed for your sister as well.
Yeah.
Right? When just happy thoughts won't work. Right? And you need the research and you need the steadiness and all those things. So it's good to have people around you that share your values, but also make different approach and mentality.
Super important.
And good. On the other side. So, okay, so we're going on the 5th cycle, and the 5th cycle is essentially you just wanting to make sure that because you could go for it with the number you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most people do. I think also, again, because of the endometriosis and because it's so hard for me to get any eggs. So again, someone my age without this issue would maybe get 15 to 20 eggs per retrieval, so per cycle.
Okay.
Eggs, not embryos.
They would get
15 to 20 eggs.
Eggs.
And then after they take the eggs out of your body, this is what happens. They're literally about to put you to sleep. And then the embryologist comes into the room and they're like, hey, is Bryant your partner? Just confirming.
Oh, just to make sure you're all there.
Yeah, just they don't want to put the wrong sperm into the eggs. And they're like, yes, he's my partner. That's usually the last thing I remember before I pass out.
Yeah. Yes, that's my partner. I think. Yes, that's it.
So after they take the happy eggs out, they take it to the lab, and they put the sperm in, and from there, not all of your eggs will fertilize.
Oh, so that's why you're going to make sure is because then we got lunges. Because not all the eggs will fertilize.
For normal people, let's say you have 10. Let's use 10 as an easy number. So out of those 10 eggs, maybe only 8 will fertilize. And that will be maybe because of the egg quality, or it could be because of the sperm, right? And it's interesting because it's much easier to be able to tell if a person's sperm is good or bad than a woman's eggs. There's no way you can actually look inside and say oh, she has this many, her eggs are this quality.
Right.
But for you guys, they can see it. They can see it. They can look at it and say oh, they can see the motility, so how well they're swimming. They can see the shape.
Does the health of the sperm impact how you do? He's not off the hook. He's got
no. I mean, he does a lot less work. That's also really his one job is to sit in a room and calls it the porno room.
We're going to cool down. We'll go the deadlift stretch, right?
But to his credit, he got all the tests done. Was also eating healthy and moving more. With me.
So he was on that journey with you too. He's like, listen, if you're making sure that you're on it as far as optimizing your environment, I'm going to be on it too.
Correct.
I love that.
And it's not a shame thing. I feel like maybe men think that, but it's just more information, right? To do the right thing or the best thing for your situation. But they can even tell if there's any DNA fragmentation in terms of the sperm. But anyway, so only a portion of them will fertilize. And then they're growing it in our petri dish.
Okay.
And at the end, 5 days, they actually give your embryo a grade.
They give it a grade.
And
which is how well it will do in terms of success.
How well it looks, to the naked eye, right? And it's a number and 2 letters. And then they can biopsy a piece of it to test and see if it's chromosomally normal. Okay. And some people, not everyone does that, right? But we chose to do that just because it's so hard for us to get any number of eggs. And so if you start with 10, maybe you only have 1 or 2 good embryos at the end of the cycle.
Okay.
It's like a funnel.
It's like a what?
A funnel.
A funnel. Not everything's gonna make it.
Not everything is, at every step something will fall off.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's normal.
Oh, side.
But that's also hard, right? Because it's not just you feel at every step you're oh no, what's gonna happen? Is it gonna be good or bad news?
And then once it's out of your hands after that.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So now you said that he had to go through part of the process with you too, right? So it's like he was making sure he was healthy. So now he goes and they check how his sperm's doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like blood tests as well, all of that stuff, general physical health. But they can also look at your sperm and see like, hey, can they swim well? How is their shape? How's the DNA stuff with the sperm doing? And from that, they can decide, like, okay, they can actually pick out the best looking sperm to fertilize your eggs.
That's amazing.
It's crazy, right?
That it just that in detail, where we just think like, okay, just a bunch go, whichever make it. They're like, no, we're gonna look to see where the strongest ones are to ensure the possibility of this.
Yeah. And every lab will do something different, maybe, but in our case at least, like we thought we wanted to do it the natural way because there's nothing wrong with his sperm. We were like, all right, let's make part of it natural at least.
Yeah.
Let's just have his sperm swim and like fertilize it instead of injecting picking out the best one and like injecting it. But to optimize, because I have so few eggs to fertilize, they didn't want anything to go wrong.
So they injected.
They still chose the best ones and injected it.
Injected it, okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really that makes a difference. That increases the chances of success.
In most cases.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that information is good because it helps you know what questions to ask when you're talking to the doctor, and that can change your outcome, right?
And you said that Brian is huge into research and everything as well. So the two of you are there going off. So the minute you realize you're going to do in vitro, what are some of the things that you tackle in terms of research as far as the right doctor, things to do,
to be honest, I was a little bit overwhelmed for a while. Brian was the one who jumped on it first. But we kind of just started with, can we find data on women like me? Because there's so much information out there for the general population going through this. But because my situation feels okay, I have a very low follicle count. I have endometriosis. What are the best protocols or most successful things people have done that have worked in my situation?
That reminds me of what you mentioned to me. So you said you were working with one doctor and they were approaching it a certain way that you said was based on probably the general public versus your
my
situation
doctor, yes.
specifically.
So at the end of the day, we narrowed it down to two doctors, I think we're very lucky that we're in LA, so we have access to some of the best doctors. Both are highly, highly regarded. But one doctor was like, our approach is let's blast you with as much drugs as I would for a normal person, just to see if more follicles will
drugs
wake up.
to increase the follicle count.
Yeah.
So
to see if any more will wake up.
What would that be called? Those kind
the
of
stimulation it's just normal stimulation protocol.
Normal stimulation protocol is there specific drugs that will increase that are designed to increase
it's a
the
quantity
amount of follicles.
And the number, Okay,
and his approach was to blast you with as much of those drugs as possible.
Just go full force, was what he said. But the doctor that we ended up ultimately to go with mentioned, the analogy he made was okay, let's say you have a garden of 20 flowers and you're fertilizing them, right? And you're using a gallon of fertilizer. That's great for 20 flowers. But let's say you only have 3 flowers in that garden. Would you still use that full gallon of fertilizer for only 3 flowers?
No.
No, because it would burn everything. And he said there's research, and in my experience, when you overstimulate someone who doesn't have that many flowers to stimulate to begin with, you end up frying them. So less of them fertilize, less of them make it to a viable state.
I'm sure when you heard that, you're like, okay, that makes sense.
I was like, oh yeah, that logically makes sense. And he was like, it may not work for you. To be honest, it may not work for you, right? But I would rather try with less stems and less chemicals first, and then we'll adjust as I can gauge how your body responds.
You know what I'm hearing from you, that that I think we really have to focus on is the fact that in vitro just isn't in vitro. It's everything.
No, it's everything.
Everything is going to differ from person to person. And just because you hit a space where you find out this is a procedure that you have to do some cycles, then you want to do research to make sure it's in complete alignment with your lifestyle, where you are medically, everything, before you just go off and just do it because you think that's the thing to do.
That's actually a really good point, because in vitro is like, oh, it's in a test tube. And it's funny because I keep, on my bad days, I'll be like, I feel like a science experiment. It's just like, everything's in this test tube. But it's not. It's really like your entire life, right? And it's also such a privilege. I know I complain about it and it's really hard, but it's also such a privilege to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but.
Yeah. But you're doing it the right way. You're doing it the right way. Well, I want to thank you for coming down.
Thank you for having me here to work out.
I'm telling you, and I got to learn so much more than what we spoke about during our regular workouts. So this is cool. May have to do a part 2.
I'm up for it anytime.
All right.